Hey everyone, welcome back to another exciting episode of the Caregiving and Entrepreneurship Reimagined podcast. I'm your caregiver and business coach, Melissa, and it's good. First of all, let me just say it's good to be back. For those of you who don't know, I'm just coming back from a 6 weeks hiatus following my father's death unexpectedly in July. And I will probably have an episode where I'll go more detailed into that. But today, I am so excited to have my guest, Charlotte Bayala on my podcast today because she's amazing. She's a caregiver, she's been a mom, and I recently was a guest on her podcast. So I will be sure to link our episode that we did together on her podcast below so you can go watch that, listen to that as well. And Charlotte, thank you so much for being on the podcast today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really happy to be here today.
Me too. I love it. That's what I love about entrepreneurship is I get to meet and interact with so many different types of people all around the world, all across the country. And meeting you was no exception. I mean, I just really felt like we just had a lot in common with similar stories and struggles, and we just learned so much from each other right out the gate. So it's a joy, complete joy to have you on the podcast today.
Thank you. Same here. I loved
A-
our conversation.
Absolutely. So let's let our listeners get acquainted with you a little bit. Can you tell us a little bit about your story
Mhm.
and your business?
Yeah. I am the caregiver for my husband. He has cancer and has had it for the past decade. And so what I did was completely fall apart when I found out about his diagnosis, and then slowly found my way back to finding a balance in my life. Um, I was also a yoga and a meditation teacher when he was diagnosed. And so some people feel like, well, you had the skills. Why didn't you just continue? And it's because caregiving swipes the legs out from all of us at the very beginning. No matter who you are, it is not usually expected. And it's just something that you are just struggling to try to figure out how to wrap your mind around, let alone how to effectively do what you feel you need to do in order to help your family and the person that you're caring for. Um, and so I was able to come back to caring for myself more and slowly started to incorporate that. But it wasn't until I kind of felt like emotionally I kind of hit a really low, and it was enough to scare me and say, wait, this isn't the way I want to live. This isn't the life my family wants to have. And so how can I work on what I need, and how can I do things so that I can be more present in my family's life, to be a more effective caregiver, and kind of hit those peaks and valleys with a little bit more resilience. Um, and so after some time, it takes time to try to find that again. I realized that there are a lot of people that were just like me who are still in that place and feel lonely, because a lot of things that we go through, no matter who you care for, are universal. Feeling lonely because you can't talk to someone about how you really feel because you're scared you're going to be judged, just resentment, because you didn't ask to do this, grieving the life that you're not going to have that you thought you were going to. There's just so many things that I would have loved to hear someone else was going through, or to be able to talk to them about, caregiver to caregiver, because even though I had people in my life that were there to really listen and support me, it's very hard to understand some of the things that we're thinking and feel if you haven't been there. And so I decided to just start sharing those stories, because sharing what we're going through, I feel it takes a lot of the fear and the loneliness away. It takes a lot of the power out of what comes from trying to hide something. And so I started the podcast, Love Your Caregiving Life, in order to just let other caregivers know that they're not alone, that we're all going through similar things, and that it's okay to be feeling things that sometimes you feel shameful for feeling.
Absolutely. And you just, oh my gosh, we got to pick apart everything you just said because you just shared some truth bombs. I definitely resonate with being a spousal caregiver first,
Mhm.
first and foremost. Caregiving for my husband going on almost 4 years now. It's crazy to think about. He
Yeah.
has epilepsy. And yeah, there is that element of when you're a wife and your spouse gets sick, you do grieve the life that you were anticipating, especially if you have children. I mean, I don't know how old your children were when your husband started getting sick, but mine was only one. And so
Yeah.
we're just right at the beginning of building our life together, and we just got hit in the gut with this unexpected illness. It was just like, what? I mean, it was
Yeah.
so much. And I definitely resonate too with I love with what you said about talking caregiver to caregiver. Because
Mhm.
and I talk about this too. I mean, like, I'm not saying that to ditch your family, ditch your friends, ditch your
Right.
church or your leaders of faith. But sometimes there's just something so powerful about having an intentional conversation with somebody that actually gets it. They get the anger, they get the grief, they get the frustration, they get the overwhelm, right? I mean, I am blessed I had a skill set of being a healthcare worker for 15 years, but the average person doesn't. And so then they're
Yeah.
having to learn how to do progress notes, make phone calls, triage symptoms, and just take this all on when they're still in the normal just season of life of just having a marriage and raising children. So
Mhm.
it's a lot to take in, and not anyone in your family per se, that either a family member or a friend or even a leader of faith. Lots of
Mhm.
times that just doesn't work because they're not in your shoes. Maybe not the exact
Mhm.
same situation, but they're not juggling the extra things that we juggle with of being a caregiver.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah. So, um, so you shared about how you started your podcast. When you started that out, did it segue immediately into other ideas for your content and for your career, or was it just
Um,
more about in the beginning just having a place and an outlet to share your story and just to kind of just get it off your chest? Because I think that's the thing as caregivers is we have so much inside and it's
mhm.
tough to get it out sometimes and figure out what's the outlet for that.
Right. I fully intended the podcast in the very beginning to be 100% for other caregivers. That I was going to share my experiences and my stories, to let other caregivers see themselves in things that I went through so that they would know that they're not alone. What I didn't expect was for each podcast episode, especially in the beginning, to be therapy for me as I cried while writing every episode and having to stop and start as I was recording each episode in the beginning, for sure, at least the first 6 months, because I realized that there are a lot of things that I hadn't processed because I wasn't talking to anyone as things, came up. And so all of that was just kind of sitting inside me, waiting to come out.
Yeah.
And so that's one reason why, I kind of played with speaking freely or writing the podcast episode in the beginning. And it really, in the very beginning, it was very clear that I needed to be able to write out my thoughts, because if not, like, there was this one episode that I had to redo because it was literally a rambling mess of tears and crying and like slurred words. So it's definitely intentional now, even more so me trying to figure out and trying to provide information, stories from other people. So when I have guests on, I really want to, like you said, there's different perspectives. We all are in caregiving together, but every caregiving experience is different and we can learn from that. And so now it's not so much therapy anymore, but it was really a gift to be able to have without knowing that I wasn't intentionally giving it to myself. Because there's a lot that until you hear yourself say things, um don't you're not able to release it, and you're also not able to completely 100% feel that feeling because you're trying to almost suffocate it, kind of just like temper it and filter, um, especially if you don't have someone else to share those things with. So the podcast ended up being more than I expected for it to be for me. Um, but thankfully, I was able I didn't say this is uncomfortable and it hurts and I'm not going to do it because I don't even know who's going to listen to this. Because that's what every podcaster, who's listening to this? Like, is there anyone out there? Like, am I just crying to a microphone and I did get feedback in the beginning that helped me continue on knowing that there are people out there that are being helped.
Right. And I think that's important is that healing, I mean, obviously for you listening, not everyone's going to be an entrepreneur, not everyone's going to be a podcaster. But what I do want you to pull away from this is that we want you to figure out a creative outlet that works for you in releasing.
Correct.
Because
Mm-hmm.
bottling it up does nobody any good. Because when you bottle up, it's going to come out, and it's usually going to come out in a nasty way, either at
Yeah.
your family, in work. It could just be marriage. It could be bad. So
Yes.
whatever outlet works for you, whether you're a podcaster like us or you write a blog, even just
Mm-hmm.
journaling. I know for me over the years, journaling has been, even back to when I was a little girl, I used to keep a diary. But as an adult, especially with dealing with some hard things with my parents' health, with
Mm-hmm.
especially being a caregiver for my spouse now, and also still trying to balance being a mom and being an entrepreneur, there's a lot on my plate. And so journaling is great because it can be your friend in terms of you can be as nasty as you want because you just need to get it out and no one's going to
Right.
know. And that's a
Exactly.
lot better too. Or if you do need some maybe professional help, never feel shame for like counseling, because
Exactly.
I will say over and over and over again, counselors and therapists are amazing because they're trained to
Mm-hmm.
deal with trauma and these really overwhelming emotions that we feel when we go through trauma. And by seeing somebody professionally, it gets your foot in the door. So if you down the road
Yes.
need other resources and referrals, and there's no shame for mental health, guys, we're not going to go there.
Mm-hmm.
It can get your foot in the door and help you down the road. So whatever
Yes.
that looks like, whether it's just picking up a hobby again that's fallen by the wayside, whether it's journaling, whether it's listening to therapeutic content like what Charlotte and I put out, whether it's joining an actual support group in your church or community center, we just want you finding something, because again, bottling it up does not help you in your
Yeah.
journey at all. It can be more damaging than helpful. So, with that being said, Charlotte, what are 3 tips you would give to caregivers right now who maybe are just at that stage like we were when like for me 4 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
and when you started your journey of adjusting to this horrible diagnosis,
Mm-hmm.
feeling overwhelmed with the fear, the grief, the anger? What would be some baby actionable steps we can give our listeners to help them through this? I mean,
Yeah.
obviously, I just vomited some ideas, but even that can be too much. So, how
Yeah.
can we help them start slow?
I
And
think, yeah, I think the first thing is to fully accept that you have the role of caregiver. Because if you continue to try to live your normal life, your pre caregiving life, um, but still have to do the things as a caregiver that you now have to do, you're not going to find a balance in anything because you're trying to fit caregiving into a life that doesn't exist anymore. If you're a caregiver, your life has changed. It doesn't matter how heavy the load of caregiving is. Um, it doesn't matter if you're a caregiver, but you also go out to work. It doesn't matter if you're a caregiver, but your parent that you're caring for also, goes to a facility full time or part of the time during the week. You're a caregiver, your life has changed. As soon as you can accept the fact that that is a new role in your life and that your life is now going to be different, then your expectations of what your life should look like will start to change and you won't always be um upset and angry that things aren't the way that you want them to be because they're not going to, you know. It, like you said, if you are, happily married and having so much fun being a couple and then all of a sudden your spouse needs you to be a caregiver, your relationship has changed. The balance is now off because now they're a patient and you're the caregiver, and there's no reason to believe that you can't go back to having parts of that relationship that you loved. But the caregiving and the illness of the other person, it changes your lives. It's not just the person who needs the care, As soon as their lives change and you're the caregiver, your life changes too. It's just easier for a cancer patient or, someone who's had a debilitating accident to understand their lives have changed. The problem is no one sits a caregiver down at that same doctor's meeting and say, all right, get ready for the ride because now everything's going to be a little bit harder. You need to change the expectations. You might need to adjust your life goals. And so I find that a lot of caregivers are extremely upset and sad and maybe depressed because their lives aren't what they want them to be because they haven't actually understood that they're a caregiver on top of everything else, being a mother, a spouse, a child, a sister, a brother. This is now a new part of your life, and you have to find a way to incorporate that into this new fashioning of the life that you are now going to have. Now, once you are able to understand that you're a caregiver, then um, start finding ways to take a minute at a time just for yourself. A lot of people talk about caregivers and self care, all the things that we can be doing. I'm sure some of us have had many lists sent to us, emailed to us by well meaning family members and friends. You just have to do something for yourself in a short amount of time. Self care doesn't mean yoga pants, massages, vacations to a tropical island. Those things are always really good to have when you can do them. But
Hmm.
every day you have to do something in order to start to reduce the stress that you're carrying. Because if you don't, you will continue to hold on to that stress. And there's a lot of stress related illnesses that will, in the future, if you don't care for yourself, put you in a position where you have to be cared for as well. And I'm sure none of us want to put that burden on our families when we're in the process of caring for a person ourselves. So it could be sitting with your coffee cup or your tea in the morning and with nothing, just your coffee, just your tea. Just take 2 minutes to enjoy that coffee, giving your body and your mind an opportunity to say, right now, we're safe and we're okay and there's nothing going wrong. Like we need the opportunity to let our bodies just say, okay, we're okay right now. Because the stress that we have, if you have a parent that you're taking care of and they're upstairs and you hear something fall, automatically the amount of stress and anxiety that you have in between hearing that and figuring out what it was, worried that it was them, your body holds on to that fight or flight. So just finding a moment at a time where you can just say, I'm just going to be here. I'm not going to worry about anything just for a minute. I know it might feel like a big ask, but every time you can do it just for a minute, then it turns into something bigger. Next time it might be a little bit longer because the feeling that you get from that will feel so good that you're like, wait, I love those tiny moments that I can get during the day. And the third one would be you don't have to hustle. Like there will be days where you have laundry piled up in front of the washing machine and you have dishes in the sink and you have no energy and you feel miserable and you're yelling at people and you're crabby and you're reacting and you are thinking nothing but negative thoughts about your day. Just let it go and just go do something. Take a nap, sit for 5 minutes. Don't try to get everything done because what you need is help. All of the caregivers are doing all of these extra jobs without any other assistance. And oftentimes we have, especially in the beginning, people asking us to tell them how they can help, but a lot of times that falls apart. You need to understand that having a team for yourself is ultimately one of the best things that you can do. Your person that you're caring for has a team. They have doctors, there's nurses, there's surgeons, there's social care workers. You deserve to have a team. You just have to put it together. So it might mean you have friends that will help you do grocery shopping certain times of the month or help you come in and do, batch things on a Sunday to help you cut things up so that you can have meals. Or we'll have someone help pay for a laundry service to just grab the laundry from your front door and then bring it back washed and folded. We have to stop trying to do it all ourselves. We're not
Hmm.
meant to. And
Hmm.
so asking for help is something that we need to be able to do. So, yeah, it would be understand you're a caregiver, take time for yourself a minute at a time, and then ask for help because people need to be asked. You can't wait around for someone to jump in and help you with something.
No, no. And that's the big thing I teach is outsourcing, reaching out for
Yeah.
help. That's the R in my prompt method that I teach is, prepare for the unexpected. Yes, get that medical information under control
Hmm.
so you can triage and take care of your loved one and be prepared for when the falls again if they decline. But the next one is R, reach out for support, build that
Yeah.
support network around you. So whether it's support for yourself in terms of like I know for me right now, I'm in a season where I'm grieving. So I started joining
Hmm.
my grief share group and I leveraged whatever free resources I got from my dad's hospice agency, which was a
Hmm.
godsend. And then, but then on the other end, my husband and I are trying to work more towards us. So we joined a Sunday school class that is for both of our age groups. So little things like
Nice.
that. Like I said, it doesn't have to be a lot, but it needs
Right.
to be something. And,
Exactly.
and especially around your home, getting organized around your home, I want you thinking about that. That can be some of the easiest ways to make the daily stress less stressful
Hmm.
because that's what you see every day. So for me, just having a routine. For me,
Yeah.
first thing in the morning, I unload and reload the dishwasher. Then it's just
Hmm.
done. Or if the hamper is 3/4 to all the way full, I get a load in the going in the washer and I give myself grace. If all I do for the rest of the day is get into the dryer, I have clean clothes for the next day.
That's
So
right.
so breaking things down either by actually paying for someone, we paid for
Hmm.
someone for a while that cleaned our house, we paid for someone that did our yard. Now we're taking
Hmm.
that back to put more money back in our budget because we're in a different season because my husband's healthier and
Yeah,
and I'm obviously not having to care for him as much, so I have more energy too. So do what you need to do for yourself. It is okay to invest in yourself,
it
whether it's
is.
paying for a service or groceries, paying for someone to clean your house, paying for laundry or groceries like we've touched on, or
Hmm.
even just subtly in your church or in your congregation of faith, choosing activities and environments that where you learn something that educates you and gives you some other skills and coping techniques to help you
Yeah.
through because caregiving is a marathon. It's
Hmm.
a, it's a marathon. It's not a sprint. So you might be in a season where all hell is breaking loose right now, or you might be in a better
Yeah.
season right now where things have calmed down on one end, but it doesn't mean they're
Hmm.
not going to ramp up again. Okay.
Right.
So it doesn't mean that you're done, and it doesn't mean that's
Right.
never going to get better. Those are the two extremes, which way the
Right.
pendulum goes. But it just means that you just need to take some time to intentionally get yourself some support,
Yeah,
both for you,
definitely.
your loved one, your like Charlotte touched on, your loved one does have an amazing team. Doctors, nurses, social worker. And if you
Mhm.
are in a season where you need some help with the caregiving duties, hospice, home health, they're wonderful.
Yeah.
So, and I'm going to say too, straight away, like hospice, it doesn't mean they're going to go like overnight. They have
Right.
more resources than just general home health. And it's a slower pace with hospice because that means there's not goals to meet. Whereas with home health, they have to meet certain criteria and goals in
Mhm.
their health journey to retain those services. Whereas with hospice, it's more palliative care.
Right.
Them being able to have the freedom to do what they can do or feel like they
Mhm.
can tolerate and handle in the season. And if they improve because they get that break of not having to meet goals, they can graduate from hospice and go back on home health. So there's
Right.
lots of resources to help you. It's just a matter of you kind of doing a little bit of research and figuring out what is available in your area because there's different rules with insurances, different
Yeah.
resources depending on where you live. If you live remote, you got to kind of maybe do a little bit more brainstorming and research about what is in your area. So, Charlotte, where can people find you? Where can we get more Charlotte Bayala?
Yeah. You can find me anywhere you would find a podcast and just search for Love Your Caregiving Life. You can find me and listen to the podcast directly at the website loveyourcaregivinglife.com. Everything is Love Your Caregiving Life, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook. Just put that in there. Um, that's the way that I can be found. Yeah, it's I have a newsletter that not only kind of breaks down each podcast episode, but also gives information that is supportive of the topic of the week, and I highlight an organization or a service that would be beneficial for caregivers. So that comes out every week, as well. So yeah, love your caregiving life. That's all you have to look for.
Right. And do you have any other resources that you want that are coming out soon that you want to highlight or anything? Or is it pretty
No,
much
right
just solely
now,
the
yeah, right.
podcast and the newsletter is kind of your
Yeah,
main focus?
podcast and newsletter is what I'm working on because I'm focusing more on being a speaker. So if you need a speaker about caregiving, I am available. Then you can just find
Ooh,
me the same way. Yeah, I have some
nice.
things
That's
coming up in the
exciting.
future, so I'm really excited.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. I love it. Well, Charlotte, I have one more question for you, and you can answer this two ways. I've had a lot of fun with various guests answering this question, but the question is, what is something that we have talked about either in our conversation today or something else that's maybe just personally inspired you in your caregiving journey that you would like to leave as a little bit of as encouragement slash pep talk for our listeners as we
Yeah.
close this out?
Um on the worst day, just know that tomorrow is another day and it can be better. So I know that we all have those moments where we think this won't get better. I don't know how to to be happy again. It is possible. So I don't want anyone to lose hope in that. Um I know that it's difficult, especially if your loved one is not in good health at the moment, but it's there. You can find that happiness. We're here to give you ways to do that. And sometimes you just have to reach out and say, I just need help.
Right. Yeah. And I think that's the hardest part of caregivers. No one likes to ask for help. There's this, I think
Mm.
it's probably partially to our culture, just this whole, just, we got this, we can do this, you know.
Yeah.
But with caregiving, guys, really, I hope you take away from this episode that you really can't do it on your own.
Yeah.
There's too much going on. It's too much. And so I want you to really be looking this week, I want you to really be thinking about what are some low hanging fruit things that you can do to nurture your mind, to nurture your body, to nurture your
Hmm.
spirit, that help because when you do that for yourself, everything else falls in place. It makes it a lot easier on you to then show up for your children, show
Hmm.
up for your spouse, show up for whoever it is that you're caregiving for, whether it is a special needs child or a aging parent, a grandparent, or your spouse. It just makes it easier because when your tank is full, you can serve your family and your loved one who's sick a lot easier because your tank is full. And I don't want you tapping out and burning out because again, like I said, this is a marathon. It's not a
Yeah.
sprint. And if you need professional help, get it. You know, counselors
Hmm.
and therapists are great. But if you'd also like someone that has actually lived through experiences like this, Charlotte and I got you. You know, that's what we're
Yeah.
here for. So,
And you deserve that happiness too. So I think sometimes we feel like we don't deserve to be happy because our loved ones are going through something difficult. You deserve to be happy. So that's
mhm.
something that is worth fighting for. Yeah.
It is worth fighting for. And I want you, and I'll leave you too, lastly, with it doesn't have to be a choice. It doesn't have to be a choice between your loved one and you being happy and pursuing your goals. Whether you're aspiring to be an entrepreneur, like what we are with our work, or maybe it might be for you, it might be something different. Maybe going after a
Mhm.
dream of learning a new hobby that's been by the wayside for years, or just volunteering or serving an organization or volunteering that just really is on your heart and soul. Do it. You
Yeah.
know, that's what's going to feed your soul and your mind and your spirit. So, Charlotte, thank you so much for joining me on the Caregiving and Entrepreneurship Reimagined podcast today. It was a joy to have you on the podcast. And for those of you listening and who have may not caught our episode on her podcast, I will leave all those uh, the and I'll leave the links for that episode below. And also, guys, my program, Caregiving and Entrepreneurship Reimagined, opens on October 11th for a limited time. So definitely check out the link for the waitlist below as well. And as always, if you guys have questions, concerns, reach out. We would love to help. Follow us on our socials, get on our newsletters. We'd love to touch base with you. And we want you to be able to realize that it doesn't have to be a choice between yourself and your loved one. You can thrive in your caregiving journey. And I look forward to seeing you guys in the next episode of the Caregiving and Entrepreneurship podcast. Thank you for being here, Charlotte.
Thank you.